Welcome to Lunch Table, Southern Company's unscripted dialogue series discussing today's important cultural matters. Hosted by Executive Vice President and President of External Affairs, Chris Womack. In Episode 1, Chris sits down with leaders from across the system to discuss our culture, diversity and inclusion, Black History Month, and more. And now, Chris Womack.
We're here talking about Black History Month. And one of the things that we have been looking at doing is all the various new communication platforms that are around. How do we use them to communicate various messages? And so, from a culture standpoint, we decided let's create this lunch table. In essence, we're sitting around this table having conversations about a lot of things. And so today we're talking about Black History Month in terms of kind of what it means to us, and what is it like being African American working in this company, and opportunities we've been afforded, challenges we've faced, and experiences we have on a day-to-day basis, and kind of insight and perspective we may have for others. So that's kind of the nature of this lunch table conversation. So I'm glad to have you guys here with us today. So what does Black History Month mean to you, Sloan?
So I'll tell you my very first memory of when I think I realized Black History Month. I was in elementary school here in Atlanta, and my mom took us out of school to go down to the very first MLK kind of day event. It was before it was a holiday. I had to miss school. We went to Ebenezer, we sat, we paraded. And then when I came back, I had to go and give presentations as an elementary school kid talking about why I missed school and what that meant to me and what that looked like. And I remember thinking, even being really young, like, why is it just a month? Like, and why is it such a big deal? And why wouldn't we just talk about some of these things all the time? And so, like, that's my very first memory of, why do we even have to just have 1 month? Why is it not just woven through every bit of the history that we talk about every single day? So.
But I think, we've been celebrating Black History Month now since 1976. It was
officially, yeah.
It was a week starting back in 1926. It was Negro History Week, but it became a month officially in 1976. So have we taken it for granted? I don't think so. I think the whole kind of diversity conversation has given a lot more credence to it and the significance of it, don't you think?
I definitely think so. I think the key thing is we've not recognized nor applauded African Americans that have achieved things, right? And so a lot of times the news that we were just talking about, it portrays us in a certain way. And I can remember I was a freshman in college before I met a professional African American male executive. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. Yeah. I was a freshman in college, right? Because I had never been exposed to a professional Black executive.
But what did you see when you were growing up? I'm suspected probably like me.
I saw the barbershop guys. I
saw
the
preacher.
And the preacher. I saw the serviceman. I saw the garbage man. But you never saw a Black executive.
No.
So I think it's critical that we expose our kids to that.
Yeah.
It's always really interesting, too, about how you grow up. So I went to a predominantly Black high school right around the corner from a historically Black college, and had African-American teachers who lived in my neighborhood. I lived near a military base. My father was a soldier, so there were African-American soldiers who lived in my neighborhood, and doctors. And so I think at an early age, I was exposed almost so that I didn't realize that we weren't in those positions until I left and went to college. Right. And then I got this kind of awakening that something like Black History Month really was something that people didn't get in school, like I got in school. And I kind of wish that for everybody. Mm-hmm. And it was a different experience, certainly growing up in a Black neighborhood with Black schools and all that kind of stuff.
But did you think you could do what you're doing now?
I never thought I'd be where I'm sitting today. No, I didn't know I could be a lawyer.
Wasn't this your dream?
No. No. I was like every little girl, right? I wanted to be a teacher, or I don't know what I wanted to be, but I didn't certainly think I'd be a Southern Company executive, a Georgia Power executive.
No, it's amazing how the tables turn and how opportunities present themselves, and where we end up and where we have ended up, and where we are now.
My parents were educators, and so, and in fact, before my dad was a principal, he was a history teacher. So Black History Month was always with me. I understood it, I knew what it was. But, the question that you raise is really important. So my role model was my father, and I thought being a principal was a big deal. And so,
I mean, he's the biggest guy in town.
That's exactly right.
That was a big deal.
No question. But I really didn't see business leaders. You know, I didn't see business leaders until I got a lot older. And I recognized pretty quickly that it wasn't a lot of people who looked like me who were in key leadership positions in business. So,
yeah, very similar to me. I thought I would be a football or basketball player. That's all I knew. And specifically not baseball. Because growing up, I'm from a small town, and there was a baseball field 500 yards from my house. I could hear them playing, hear the announcer every game.
Right.
But I wasn't allowed to play on that field. So I never considered baseball as an option. So what I thought I would be could be a football or basketball player. That's it. And like I said, didn't know any professionals. I took the ASVAB for all those old folks. You know, that's that aptitude test back then. That showed me I could, probably be an engineer or math and science. That's the only way I knew that. But I didn't see anybody who was a role model for me.
I didn't know you had basketball skills, Pedro.
Hey, I'm from Carolina, man. Point guard.
More Carolina stuff.
He had basketball.
Let's be
Back
clear.
in the day.
Well, yeah, he had football skills too.
Y'all wrong.
So what about you?
So I thought I'd be a psychologist or a doctor. And so some days I feel like I get to be a little bit of both of that.
That fits in your role today.
I didn't plan this. And
I mean, a lot of therapy.
A lot of therapy, lots of
Who's your
supporting
favorite
people.
Who's your favorite patient?
You can't answer that. And it might be you, so you don't want to answer it.
Who's your favorite
I love
patient?
everybody the same.
Tell me. I mean, we'll keep your confidence.
Yeah, no. So I think I'm doing a little bit of what I thought I would do, but I grew up. I was one of 5 Black kids in my school. We were the first Black family in my neighborhood. Remember people coming to see us, and I had a little friend that thought I had to be on the Cosby Show because clearly, if I was Black and was in that neighborhood, I had to be someone that they saw on TV. But I had parents that really just said, look, you're going to have to do whatever you think you need to do to make it, and you're going to have to work hard, but you can do it. And I never really doubted. I didn't think I would do this, but I knew I could do it if I just worked hard. And that's a gift in that, of coming from a place where you just don't question that you're going to have a chance to do something if you work hard enough.
Well, guys, I mean, you look around this table, I mean, and the success that we've all achieved, I mean, you got to say Southern Company Gas, Georgia Power, other parts of our company. We've made it. Diversity has got to be. We can check that box and say we've achieved and accomplished all we need to accomplish in that respect. I mean, look at us, and there are others that are not here. So you're going to say, Chris, what are you drinking? Or
Exactly.
Yeah, what are you drinking?
It is water. I mean, so what more do we have to do? I mean, what is it? I mean, like I said, I do think. I feel good about our numbers in some places from a diversity standpoint. But what more is it we got to do? I mean, what do we have to get better at?
Yeah, I think when you think about I always think about the young engineer who is out in an operating headquarters where likely he or she doesn't see anybody else of color every single day, or not many. Maybe they're a couple of linemen, maybe they're not, and the experience that they have. And a lot of times, I know that experience isn't as rich and supportive as it needs to be, and that's why she's not staying, right? And so it's nice to see, of course, all of us sitting here, but it's about all of our employees being able to achieve their best in an environment that's inclusive, and we're not there yet.
Feedback. I mean, one of the things I always worry about is, are we making sure African Americans and throughout the company, how good or how bad are we at giving feedback, and particularly giving honest feedback, and then helping coach people to kind of move up and do different things and grow and be competitive for various roles about this company. I mean, so that's one of the things I worry about in terms of us and others getting the kind of feedback they need to be prepared or know what they do. Got to get better at to be competitive.
We struggle with giving people really good, candid feedback if they look different than us. And so, I've had a lot of people who've pulled me and said, look, you need to think about this, you need to do this differently, and they cared enough to say that. I don't know that everyone has had that kind of experience. So we don't always tell people the things they need to hear. Bentina, you'll give me feedback, and I'll give you feedback, but I don't know that was always the case, and people always did that across kind of culture lines and gender lines and racial lines. And so if we're not giving that same type of feedback and counsel and support, and you got to stop doing that, but you need to start doing this, then we're not going to help in some of those areas with experience and opportunities because people just won't get it. They won't know and they'll leave.
But they'll, the Whisper campaign will offer feedback indirectly.
Well, yeah, but how helpful is that when it's
And how long might that take?
Exactly.
Right, how long might that take?
Until it's too
I think
late.
the key thing
But
is
you know
for,
it's there.
Yeah, I think the key thing is for all of us to make sure we're mentoring others, we're sponsoring others, and having that dialogue with
Right.
them. So even if they're not a direct report of yours, mentor someone and give them that feedback, give them that whisper conversation. And, hey, Martin, here's what I heard. You need to fix that.
Yeah.
And we need to be, yes, I think we need to be comfortable asking, for
Absolutely,
the feedback as well. That's one of the things that a lot of us don't do. In fact, you ask for feedback often. You ask me for feedback.
Absolutely.
What's the story on me is the question that he asked me. And I thought, wow, that's very, very interesting. Someone as established and where he is in the country.
Was that because you didn't grow up here? I mean, where did you get that from? Where did you get comfortable
I've always
asking
done that
for that?
in my career. I've always done that. I've always asked others, what's my reputation in the company? Because if you don't know your reputation in the company, you're in trouble. And so you go to safe places to ask. And I knew John was going to give me the skinny, and he did. He said you didn't like me, Chris.
You got to watch out for him.
John would never say that. We've been together too long.
We have.
Yeah.
We have.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. Giving that honest feedback and being intentional about developing others. We all know, we talk about diversity and inclusion. I think inclusion is an area we have to work on.
Yeah.
You said the numbers are good, but if it's not inclusiveness, the numbers really don't matter, right?
That's exactly right.
But, we all know that diversity helps us. If we want to be the best company we can be,
Right.
we know having the diverse opinions makes us more innovative, creative, better problem solvers. It gives you a competitive advantage. So really anybody, no matter what color, race, whatever, you want to be the best company we want to. You want to have those diverse opinions. You want people to feel, as Bentina said, open, that they can express themselves, be themselves. That's what makes us all better. So we're still not there totally in my mind.
I agree with that. The numbers are important. And when we think about the utility industry, numbers from a number standpoint, we look good. If you compare that to the banking industry, right? They're having huge problems with diversity, especially when you look at the upper levels of those organizations. But I think I'd love to reiterate what you said. It's really about inclusion. Mm-hmm. And there's still more work to do. Just because you have the numbers,
Right.
it doesn't mean that we actually have the inclusion that we need in order to be successful.
No, I do. Like I said at the outset, I do think at the senior levels, I think our numbers look pretty good. Mm-hmm. But I think it's not a time for us to become complacent. Check the box, saying we've made it.
But if you've got more talent, people of color leaving out the back door than you can bring in the front door,
Right.
You know you're not an inclusive environment. That's a good point. I think we all understand that diversity of thought is critical for us. Mm-hmm. And in fact, one of my favorite quotes is, all thinking is flawed and incomplete. Mm-hmm. All thinking is flawed and incomplete. So you need somebody else's perspective to complete your thoughts.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And if you have diversity of thoughts, then it's going to be a better thought.
Right.
Yeah.
But do you have to have an environment that welcomes that diversity of thought?
Absolutely.
And people not,
Absolutely.
I think people sometimes still are afraid to say things and to raise it and have good ideas and have things that they want to do, but they don't do it because they don't know that it's going to be well received or it's going to be welcome or it's going to be appreciated. So,
Or heard at all.
Or heard at all. I mean, you can be here, but if you can't be here and work here and thrive here, then what's the point?
But as we wind this down, what else as a company, as we go through Black History Month, as we think about diversity and inclusion and belonging and those kind of things, should we be focused on as we kind of really try to help this company continue to advance in this space?
Now, Chris, one of the things I've seen be very successful in a company around diversity and inclusion is, number one, you got to recognize everybody's on their own personal journey, and they're going to take it at their own personal pace. But once they're ready to take a step, having dialogue across difference is the best thing you can do, right? So if I'm struggling with some affinity group, right, I need to have a conversation across difference with that individual that represents that group so I can understand perspectives. Not that I have to agree with the perspective, but I can understand and respect it. So I think having dialogue and conversation across difference is critical.
Yeah, I think that the thing that gets us where we need to be is being able to have the conversations. And that's really what we struggle with, because we'll always have natural limitations if we can't talk about the things that are holding back us having relationships across the differences.
Right.
Unless we're not able to sit down at a table, or we need to be able to sit down at a table with someone who doesn't look like us and talk about an experience or talk about an employee or talk about something that's not even meaningful, but in a way that lets us transcend our differences. And if we can't get there, if we can't encourage people to be courageous, because that's what it takes at this point to have those conversations, then we'll never get to where we ultimately want to be.
I'm always keen on that, and I've said it earlier. I think, we got to keep focused on the numbers. We got to keep bringing in as many folks as we can of color, but then making sure they are getting the coaching, the feedback, the support they need to be successful. We can't bring people in and leave them on an island somewhere and not help them and lift them up and support them. And I mean, when they screw up, give them a second chance. Offer the feedback and the counseling and the support, the executive coaching, whatever is necessary to help them be successful. Like I said, we got to keep working on the numbers, but I think really intentionally focused on giving people the support necessary to be successful.
I think we have to recognize that this is a great company we work for. I mean, if you point to the numbers, I mean, I think that's really important. So I don't want to move away from that. You think about Black History Month, and every operating company has a Black History Month program, and there's always a focus on that as well. When you look at our giving, from the organizations, you touch, the African American community in a meaningful way. But I think we really have to look beyond Black History Month in terms of our execution. Black History Month is great, the numbers are great, but let's look beyond that in terms of making sure that everyone has a meaningful, experience with Southern Company, and making sure that everybody feels like they have an opportunity to achieve as much as they want to achieve.
Well said.
Yep, very well said. I heard a simple saying the other day, you have to value difference to make a difference. Think about
Interesting.
that. At those
Boy,
points,
y'all got some
with
quotes today, man. I mean, y'all did y'all rehearse?
No, I just thought about this 5 minutes.
Like the rest of them.
Man, we planned this a week ago.
You speak French now. Somebody planned this a week ago.
Pedro, what were you saying before you were interrupted?
That was it.
He was profound.
by the laughter. I mean, the last thing, I think it's the last thing. I mean, and John, you touched on it. I mean, there's a lot of anxiety in the street, income disparity, who has opportunities, who don't, homelessness, gentrification, bunch of stuff in the street. And so you say, I mean, we're here to provide our customers and communities with all the great energy we can supply them with. But it's like, okay, how do we make sure we do that and run a good company and provide the best returns we can to our shareholders, but also make sure we do all the other stuff? I mean, how do you guys feel about it, how we do the other stuff?
I think it's important to our commitments to our communities, right? So we can't be a company that only cares about half the community. So when we are out in the community, we have to help the community deal with its own issues around diversity and inclusion, which normally manifests itself as gentrification and inequity. And so when we do economic development, it's got to be inclusive economic development. It's about bringing everybody up in that community, not just some people up in that community. And sometimes in some of the communities we're in, that has to be our role. There's no one else at the table who's able to do that with the resources in particular that we have to do that.
When you think about the fact that all of our companies, we have an obligation to serve all of our customers. We can't just choose a certain segment to serve. We have an obligation to serve all of our customers. If you think about that concept, it's in our best economic interest to try to look for opportunities to support those customers who have less.
Absolutely.
It's in our best economic interest to support those communities. And so we need to try to meaningfully help communities to bring them up to a level so that they can pay their power bills. They can pay their gas bills, right? So really, it should be in our self-interest to support these communities. And so if you don't want to think about it from sort of a philanthropic way, think about it from an economic interest way.
I view the philanthropic way or the charitable way as investments.
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, because I do honestly believe we get returns on those investments.
Well, we do, and we live and work in those communities and environments, and we all know that what happens to you outside of work comes into work. And if we're going to do all the things that we need to do, be innovative and be creative and continue to be ahead of the game, then you have to have people that can be totally well and can be totally involved and thoughtful about the work that they're doing. And you can't do that if you go home and you're in an environment and you drive through areas where you know that people don't have. So economically, we need to do it, but we need to do it because that's how we make sure we have a company that can deliver on all what we want and what we promise. And I love what you said. I mean, there are places where it's just us.
Right.
There is no one else there to do that.
I think at the end of the day, as a leader, as an executive, you got to do three things: lead yourself, lead your team, and lead the community. And we should expect that of all of us.
That's very true, Martin.
Yeah. Guys, this has been good. Thanks.
A little more notice next time.
Welcome to the lunch table. Thank y'all.
Thank you for having
Okay,
us over
you're
for
welcome.
dinner.
You're
Lunch,
welcome.
Mr. Womack.
Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed lunch.